Welcome to this episode of IIMCreate, the IIM Calcutta Center for Entrepreneurship and Innovation webinar series that features successful IIM Calcutta alum in the domain of entrepreneurship. Entrepreneurial ventures launched by IIM Calcutta alumni have had substantial impact in India and around the world, creating millions of jobs with sizable revenues to spur economic and social development. The IIMCreate channel celebrates their achievements and accomplishments. Our guest today is Mr. Ajit Balakrishnan from the IIMC MBA batch of 1971. He had started his entrepreneurial venture by co-founding Rediffusion when he was only 22 years old. He founded Rediff.com in 1995 and it was listed on NASDAQ in 2001. He has served as the chairman of the Ministry of Information Technology Working Group and also chaired a committee appointed by India's Ministry of Human Resource Development on Research and Faculty Enhancement at the 7 IIMs. He continues to be involved in many public service roles. Mr. Balakrishnan is a popular writer and his book, The Wave Rider, a chronicle of the information age, speaks volumes of his insights into the waves of changes involving industrial and technological revolutions shaping the modern world. Mr. Balakrishnan served as the chairman of the Board of Governors of Indian Institute of Management, Calcutta for 2 successive terms spanning over 10 years. IIM Calcutta achieved phenomenal growth and international recognition during his tenure, and his contributions were recognized by the Institute by conferring him the Distinguished Alumnus Award in 2017. Our immense pleasure to welcome Mr. Balakrishnan to this episode. With me are Professor Manish Thakur, Dean, New Initiatives and External Relations, Dr. Shubhranshu Sanyal, CEO of the IIMC Innovation Park, and Mr. Krishna Sankhi, MBA 1, who will represent the IIMC ESEL. Over to you, Manish.
So, Mr. Balakrishnan, it's a delight to have you with us this morning. I wish we could do it in an offline mode, but nonetheless. So the first thing is what prompted you to be an entrepreneur? I remember having read that your father was a doctor in a North Kerala town, and business was not part of something that ran through your family. So what motivations drove you to be an entrepreneur in the first place? So I would like to have your initial thoughts on that.
Well, 2 aspects to that question. First of all, thank you for inviting me, guys. I'm really good to be able to contribute something back to my alma mater. I'm thinking about it. In a sense, when your father is a doctor, and he was a doctor, and my grandfather and grandmothers were doctors, and they ran a hospital. My grandparents ran a hospital in Salem, which is not far from there. These are all in the 1930s. Okay, so I look back, I think maybe I was just being like them, using professional skills in a way to serve society and make enough money to make sure your hospital runs correctly and so on and so forth. We often say when you think of entrepreneurs, you're thinking of a business guy who sits in a shop and buys from somebody and sells to somebody else. This is not strictly true. The modern era entrepreneur is a knowledge-based business, and to some extent, without my realizing it back in 1971-72, I was following my father and grandfather. They used to be called set up private practice, quote unquote, So maybe that was the reason why. The other part was my head was boiling when I was at the institute. I was boiling with new ideas and how businesses should be, etc. But when you look at the kind of, I had offers from all the top companies, and I was thinking I didn't see myself as a guy wearing a suit and jacket and sitting in a office, in a posh office, being driven by a chauffeur, not really contributing very much. So I thought, let me take a chance. I did these things instinctively. I and 2 or 3 of my friends and others took a 3rd-class train to Bombay, where that was becoming the hotspot of all kinds of commercial activities. And came here and stayed there, and within 6 months founded Rediffusion. So, that's the way it is.
It's good the way you have put it. because we always think of an entrepreneur about, as you said, buying and selling things. But here is a case where how to apply the knowledge that you have acquired to your entrepreneurial venture. So that brings me to my next question, that your 2 years in IIM Calcutta, how would you relate the 2 years of training or 2 years of whatever you did in IIM Calcutta to your entrepreneurial venture? In what way it helped or did not help in whatever you did later in life?
In a fundamental way, I was introduced to statistics for the first time in my life in 1969. Now, like most kids entering IIMs those days and even today, we tend to maths, physics, chemistry, mathematics, etc. But statistics was not part of deep dive. So I really fell in love with statistics, and IIM Calcutta historically has been very strong in statistics. At most times, as you see, the leaders, perhaps including today, is a graduate from ISI Calcutta. So I loved that portion, and that stood me in good stead, because unknown to all of us, the swing towards quantification and mathematization both in finance and as well as in the internet world was not anticipated at that time, 1971. But it came in tremendously useful. Even today, some of my 25-year-old colleagues who are just out of IIT Bombay, for example, are astonished that I know the underlying thinking, because Markov chain, and they say, how can you know all this? I said, I learned it 51 years ago. They all burst out laughing. But truly it is true. I learned Markov chain at IIM Calcutta, and Markov chain is central to many, many breakthroughs which is going on in the internet today. So that's it. I think that was one. The second portion which I really stood to appreciate was learning economic history. We had some fantastic teachers at that time, and I'm sure even today you have it. Barun Day and I think Sabyasachi Bhattacharya, we were understood that life is not just a series of new events. You have to look back into history and understand why it happens, which has taught me a great deal of insight, both from my entrepreneurial activities as well as for various policy forums that I'm asked to participate in. For example, there is things like, everyone asks why did Naxalism start in Bengal, and most people say, oh, it is because of communist influence, Chairman Mao. It is not true, and I learned sitting at Barun Day's and Sabyasachi's feet that at that time, jute, the area of Naxabari district, about 40% of the people there were growing jute, and when polypropylene arrived and destroyed jute, the impact was felt horribly in Bengal, particularly. So the impact of technology on in terms of jobs and things of that kind, all those connections were intimately discussed in IIM Calcutta history class, though Naxabari had not happened by then, and all that was in the future. But economic history and statistics are the two things which really, came apart from marketing and all the functional areas. So IIM Calcutta then has a deep intellectual climate, which is very important, because as a business and really doing something outstanding and new in business is not like a trader's shop. You do something original, you need all these skills. And I'm glad that even today, IIM Calcutta focuses on all these basic skills.
Yeah, something on this intellectual climate. I have always admired you, not because of your success as an entrepreneur, but I often wonder that how did you develop this well-grounded view, this awareness about the larger context, be it historical, be it political, economic context, or the wider processes that you see around yourself in the society. And I'm saying it because I have heard you many a times, and as chairman of BOG, in many of your conversations, you would begin with Industrial Revolution. I remember you would show us one of the pictures. Yeah. And also, I have read your book, The Wave Rider, with great care. And there also, the wonderful thing is that you have related each and everything to the wider socio-economic processes and the global context. So apart from whatever you have learned in IIM Calcutta, you talked about economic history and many other things, some of the great teachers. So what makes you acquire, or what made you acquire this well-grounded historical, political, economic view of anything or everything?
I would attribute at least 80% to the 2 years I spent at IIM Cal, at least, because learning something new, at that age comes easily. And when you have absolutely brilliant teachers, life becomes so much easier because they kind of charm you into loving the subject. Similarly, for example, I'm a great fan of sociology, and I keep looking at it, and I'm still doing a lot of work today in applying mathematical and statistical methods in sociology. I again I went into a class by Kamini Adhikari, who was a professor there, and I was astonished that there was something called sociology. And that gave me a perspective to life which I didn't have, because I told you, from childhood you're taught, mathematics and physics and chemistry and literature and history. All guys are failures who do those shits. That is a middle class approach to life at that time and possibly even today. So so it's I had put 80% to what I learned at IIM Cal.
So now I think, Balaram, my time is up. So Balaram will guide us. Yeah.
Thank you, Mr. Balakrishnan. Very interesting insights as usual. I now request Shubhranshu to ask his questions, and after that he will pass it on to Krishna.
Yeah, thanks, Professor Balaram. Good morning, Ajit. So you know that we work with entrepreneurs. We want to encourage youth to be job givers, right? So one basic question is that what would be the motivation for this youth to take the plunge, right? So now we have a lot of success stories of unicorns, first generation entrepreneurs in few years time creating a startup venture which becomes unicorn. So that is definitely one big motivation. But the question to you, Ajit, is since you have seen this entire life cycle, so what should be the motivator for an entrepreneur to start a venture? Is it becoming a unicorn or some other dream? What is your opinion on that, Ajit?
I can say with 100% certainty that this whole unicorn search is all complete bullshit, if you forgive my use of the expletive. I think the purpose of entrepreneurship is not to make personal money. I don't know, that is wrong. I think some of our media have hijacked it and done it. That is not true. The entrepreneurs, be it Thomas Alva Edison or others, do not do this creative activity called entrepreneurship to earn tons and tons of money. They do want to create money because money helps you grow the business. Money helps you do more technical innovations. You have to come with an idea of a product or a service which will serve humanity in a way that they've never experienced before. It'll make their lives a little easier. So that is what entrepreneurs do. But behind that, unfortunately, the shareholder value maximization fever started, and they're trying to take over this whole. The unicorn is complete nonsense. I think what you need to do is to have a an idea like I often point out the cost of this man called Metro Sridharan, who comes from not far away from where I come from. Now he is a tremendous entrepreneur. He worked and set up a number of metro lines along the west coast in Bombay, in Calcutta, in Delhi. Now, if we say he's a true entrepreneur, he didn't do it from increasing his personal wealth, okay? Or Dr. Kurian, who founded Amul, and thereby created a model of cooperative farming, which they're both great entrepreneurs. According to me, entrepreneurship doesn't mean trading in the stock market, to offering kickbacks to people, etc., or making some stupid venture capitalist rich. It can't be. That can't be the goal of entrepreneurship. Entrepreneurship goal is to create a product or service which in a large sense serves humanity. And of course, you need to make profits out of it. But profits are what, profits are what keeps the business valid and going and not subsidized by somebody else. But one other thing I'd like to point out and ask a lot of young people considering this, because you don't need $1 billion to have a good life. Okay, and if you want my calculation, it is if you have a good home to stay and about 15-20 crores in the bank, you've done very well for yourself, and you can practically live an idea full of life. And that is only $2 or $3 million. You don't need to have $1 billion to live a life well. If you do a startup and you make 10-20 crores for yourself in the first 5, 7, 8 years, which is relatively easy to do, you can use that to extend your business, make sure that the service or product that you're providing serves humanity in a fundamental way. Okay, so I think this pursuit of unicornship, I think, is a bend in the road, which I hope will soon be corrected. Yeah.
Thanks, Ajit. I think this is extremely valuable input for the entrepreneurs who are planning to start their business. A related question, since you spoke about money, venture capitalists. Now, if you look at the early stage startups, you will see that if you ask them that, what are you looking for, right? Or what support you need? I think everybody will say money, and we want to raise funds. So they are all chasing VCs, right? And when we ask them, why are you chasing VCs? They feel that, if I don't get funded by VCs, I will not be able to scale up, not be able to grow. So that's the perception. The question to you, Ajit, is it essential that you need to chase VCs in order to grow, or it can be done by self-sustaining profits? What is your thought?
I think we should encourage young startups to do as much as possible through internal generation, as much as possible. Because having a venture capitalist at a very early stage, when your industry and business is not well fully defined, is a tremendous distraction. I know practically all the venture capitalists in India, in one form or the other. All of them labor under one problem. Their funds are raised for 7 years. So once they raise the funds, they have to exit in 7 years. So they don't have time for an entrepreneur to spend more than 2-3 years to grow his business. They need to go out. So they put pressure on the entrepreneur to spend the money that he has, grow quickly, etc., etc. Now, in many markets, it takes a long while to grow. It doesn't take that easy, particularly in India. The available market size is very challenging, and so as people can't afford many products, you have to make it super inexpensive. So all of that you have to be very careful. One of my dreams is to reform the venture capital industry in India. And I have served on some government committees where we made the recommendations. The key recommendation I've made, which is there even in the National Education Policy document, is that the entity called Limited Liability Partnerships, LLP, be introduced, which they have done already about 5 years ago. But making LLP partners able to set off the investee company losses against their personal income, as yet we've not been able to convince the income tax department. When you then that happens, every single person in India who's a businessman who has maybe 50 lakhs or a crore to spare will go and invest in a startup as part of an LLP, where he's protected because of the limited liability part of it from any liability that the startup may incur. But at the same time, the startup's first year to second year losses, he'll be able to set off against his income. So I'm continuing to lobby with government, and one of these, they're all agreed with me, just that they have to find the occasion there's no distraction from other political election priorities and so on. They will get down to implement the limited liability partnership idea. So that will free us from these American VCs who have all the gamers to take a stake in the startup, any startup that they see in front of them, and turn around and sell it after 2 years to one of the big tech American companies. They turn around and sell it. Like Walmart found a way into India after struggling by paying huge amounts and taking over Flipkart. So I think you have to be careful. I think we have to reinvent the venture capital system in our country. Not good.
Ajit, that you are working on these policy interventions. And I believe that it's really required so that we have a robust Indian, the homegrown funding support for the entrepreneurs. Another question that we frequently face from the entrepreneurs, that is, we all know that how a team is important for a startup, right? And that's probably the most important factor for a startup. Now, many entrepreneurs, they start the journey alone, but then once they grow, once they see some success, they feel the need of partners. They feel the need of co-founders, right? But that is extremely difficult job, that who would be my co-founder, where to find them, and what kind of co-founder I need. So Ajit, can you please share some insights from your journey, that how would somebody look at a partner, and is it essential to get a partner on the way?
You know, it helps a lot if you have a partner, but you have to make sure that the partner comes from a similar value background. My co-founding partner, Arun Nanda in Rediffusion, is an IIM Ahmedabad graduate. So at that time, 1971, nearly 50 years ago, we in a sense thought alike on most problems. Okay, the relative role of money, relative role about ethics, not paying under the table for anything. There are some good middle class values that both of us shared. That helped a lot. Okay, and as a other part of the complementarity was, I was very deeply always deep into analytical things, diving into tons of data. Even when we, did the Congress campaign in 1984, I think we created huge amounts of data and analyzed it for the first time in Indian history. And Arun's strength is that he is a fantastic relationship person. Okay, he can manage any relationship anytime very smoothly. So the combination of 1 is 1 plus 1 becomes 10. So if you pick a partner with basically the same values as yourself, that's very important. If the values are not aligned, you get into trouble. And then you have complementary skills. And that helps a tremendous amount. You don't need to make the same mistakes, Yeah.
Thanks, Ajit. I think the two keywords that I picked up is values. The value system should match, and then complementary skill sets. And very important that you don't make the same mistakes again and again. Thanks, Ajit. I think that's all from my side. Over to you, Professor Balaram.
Thank you, Shubhranshu. Krishna, would you take over now?
Yes, sir. Good morning, Ajit, sir. First of all, I'm really glad to be a part of this beautiful discussion, and the peaceful and the amazing advice which you already shared with us in the discussion. I am sure that in the upcoming future, it would really help me as an aspirant entrepreneur as well. So, sir, basically, I have a few questions. Seeing the huge number of books on the background, I want to know what sort of books or website would be helpful to me as an aspirant and an enthusiast entrepreneur.
Okay, one of the things we should do is that since you and this generation of yours is now going to start the entrepreneurial journey now, managing big data and extracting patterns out of it very quickly and making sure that you're doing it right is going to be very critical. And I keep telling all the kids in the office, to outsource your analytics in your business is like outsourcing sex in a marriage. You can't do that. Huh? You outsource sex in a marriage, what's left in your marriage. So similarly, so I think IIM Calcutta starts you off well with the deep quant background. But it's while you're there, one site that I would direct you to is Kaggle. I'm sure you probably go there often enough anyway. Kaggle is a website which contains large number of data sets, and they run contests. Okay, I often enter that even nowadays, but I enter it under my cat's name, because if they see my name, all of them get a little flustered. So I enter it not to win the battle as much as to see wonderful data sets. I would strongly recommend that you encourage all our kids on campus through the innovation e-cell to enter Kaggle contests. So, and it's not that they want to win, the goal is not to win money, but they give you data sets, real life data sets from India, which helps you experiment and see what are the segments that we have in our market. Where can I see, detect a pattern? When do I see there is an unfulfilled need, etc. Today, earlier in the 70s and 80s, we used to sit and speculate about these things. Today, there is a large amount of data sets, both in India and the United States and from China. Even the Chinese are releasing data sets. So I'd say the number one priority is to go to Kaggle every day. I go about 5-6 times a day, including today morning, I've been on it five times, okay, to see what's going on and play with the data and actually do things, not just read, okay. So that is very critical. The other portion is, I read lots of books, partly because in our time, my time, as opposed to yours, most data was available only as books, but anyway, I think the management strategy books make sense, though a lot of the strategy books are written up to the 70s and 80s and today question marks. But I think there are strategy books. For example, The Innovator's Dilemma is a book by Clayton Christensen, I think, which still makes sense, even though he wrote it in one context, the context has changed. It shows the dilemmas in front of innovation. And why this kind of thinking is important. For example, I'll give you, there was when the early stages, or early stages, somewhere in the 80s, up to the year 2000, BlackBerry was a device. I think maybe Manish Thakur and all will remember that. You guys have not heard. Every investment banker I ran into on Wall Street when we were trying to do a listing had a BlackBerry. Okay, every person that you talked to had a BlackBerry. That was like a mobile phone with we could just text. But today you don't hear of BlackBerry; they're dead and gone. Okay, so it is worth reading the literature as to what happened to cases like BlackBerry. Okay, because you can avoid similar mistakes inside there. And there are books about what Bezos does in Amazon, a particular style of management. That again is worth reading. I think he's written a book, I think Wandering and something, I think it is called. So there's a lot of good management books about entrepreneurs written by themselves, both about successes and of failures. So my point is, read about it and anticipate it. Why go through the same fate yourself? Because one of the big lessons for entrepreneurship, which most young people don't realize, that you must learn the art of failing cheaply. There's an art for failing cheaply. So what it means that if you every day, even today, after all my gray hair and wisdom, etc., out of 10 ideas that I experiment in a given month, 8 turn out to be worthless. Okay, by experiment. Now, if you can't sink your entire fortune on just one idea, so you have to make sure you learn how to do a test, either a test market or a test creation of it, relatively inexpensively. Test it once or twice before you attempt to scale. So the art of failing cheaply is very, very important too. And there are a number of books on that. Maybe I'm in the process of writing a book on innovation, so I hope to include a couple of chapters of real-life cases from India and abroad on the art of failing cheaply. Otherwise, you risk everything into one big gamble. That is called gambling. That is not entrepreneurship. Because if you miss a bet, you're gone. So the art of failing cheaply is something which we need to do. There are plenty of books on that. Yeah, you can see in the background all the. I have about 5,000-7,000 books right now, and I read 6 books a week. But I'm not the only one. I think Bill Gates also reads 5-7 books a week. So I'm not unique at all. Okay.
Amazing, sir. Yes, sir. So generally, we also, like, I'm an avid reader, so I read most of the books about the successful entrepreneurs. But you told me, those side of things are also important, the failure part and this thing.
Yeah.
So I'm sure, like, I will be reading more about that as well from now onwards.
One of the problems with success stories is most of it happened at that moment of success. It's hype. The publishers are notorious for wanting to ride a hype and sell books on that basis. But you must see the other side too. Why did BlackBerry fail? Why did, why did Steve Jobs die early? Because it's a very tense man. Don't forget, there are multiple reasons behind, so in each innovation, there are multiple reasons why is it? Oh, one of my recent favorite topics. I gave a 1-hour talk to the computer science guys in Chennai a couple of weeks ago about India has several alleged billionaires in the IT services business. Okay, you probably know all the name, and probably about 1 or 2 million Indians are working in India and elsewhere as software guys. But why is it that we've not contributed a single programming language to the game? Python was not invented here. JavaScript was not invented here. We have not a single language to contribute. What is the reason that we're training our youngsters to just go and try and big bucks? Or is it? Or sit in an office being part of a body shop, they'll pay you every month and you remit the money to your parents and wife and you live quietly, drinking in a bar in the evening. There's no urge. But why is it India has not a single programming language invention? And that is even more surprising when you go back and look at, I'm an avid reader of Indian mathematical texts belonging to the 3rd century BC and so on. I've got a whole collection of them at the back here. We invented the zero. We invented the numeric system of 1, 2, 3 up to 9. And without that system, there is nothing in the world could have happened. And the invention of the zero and the numeric system went from here to the House of Wisdom in Baghdad. And when the Ottomans invaded Europe, they took that in the 10th or 12th centuries when algebra and things of that kind got to Europe. And we've been using it, but of course we're using it for wrong reasons. We're using it for astrological predictions. Nobody in India wanted to apply mathematics to solving real life problems. Well, at that stage they thought, astrology is like a comforting service. But they had to predict planets and positions, which is how mathematics grew. But it's very important. I think India must contribute at least one major programming language, if not an operating system itself, and not pride ourselves on the number of IT billionaires that we have. We're just body shoppers, basically.
So that was really amazing to know more about these things. So the next thing I want to know is, regarding the money part, it always comes in the mind. Taking the VC money and taking some other funding sort of thing, or doing it by the self-sustaining profits. So what should I do in this journey?
I think you never say no to the VC. Keep them there, keep them informed so they're watching you, but try and do a business model which is self-sustaining right from the beginning. That's very important. Now, 8 out of 10 chances that the startup you're envisioning is in fintech. Is it likely? What are you planning to do? Are you planning something in fintech? Yeah.
Not in fintech, sir, particularly, but like it's a product-based something. I was thinking more on the lines of.
Okay. I think then, yeah, the VCs also have fashions. So if you're in fintech, they'll put in money because I think fintech is now going through the process of disaggregation that media went to about 15 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
So I think just watch out, just see whether your product market is quote unquote in fashion. So in some ways, doing a startup is like creating a Bollywood film. You guess what the audience wants at that time and will they become a hit or not a hit. But I'm sure you think. But don't keep the VCs around, but don't expect them to tell you what the right thing to do. Most of them are clueless. I know practically all of them. They need some serious 3-month management development program at IIM Calcutta. The whole lot of it. Yeah. Okay.
Yes, sir. So the last thing I want to know, currently I'm also a student of IIMC Calcutta only. So any memories you want to share about your student life? It would really be amazing.
Oh, the list is so long. If I start, I won't end today. But no, I think the main memory is coming from a small town, rural area like Kannur, where I came from, and going to college nearabouts, coming to a place where everyone is as intelligent as you are and come from every part of India. You won't believe it, but in 1969, when I arrived at Howrah station by a third-class train from the Madras Mail or something to join IIM, I had not heard Hindi being spoken. Can you imagine that? The first Hindi that I heard spoken was there, real-life Hindi, not movies. Huh? And so it is opened my mind, and then it created long-lasting friendships with people. Some of whom my classmates I still meet, because when sometimes I feel frustrated with life and business, and I call one or two of them over, or I go to their place and we put up our feet and drink, and all those negative thoughts are dismissed. But I think it creates a great bond between people during the 2 years you spend there. I must also tell you one or two actual examples that I was given 2 awards when I graduated. Now you guys, it's a task for you to go and research what I won those awards for. I promise you it is not because of academic ranking that I got the award. I was okay, I was in the top third of the class, but that apart. But one was given for conflict resolution. There was massive conflicts going on, faculty versus faculty and students versus this, etc., etc. But 1971 was, Calcutta was boiling. At that time, it's difficult to explain. So I believe that the faculty gave the award for acting as a, in between to make sure people don't lose their temper and went on doing research and teaching, etc. But you better research it. Some people will tell you more about it. But what I found interesting was that as I was about to graduate, I had just graduated and about to leave, there was an appeal which came to me through some of our faculty saying there is a 1971 elections about to be held, and they wanted people as volunteers to go and work in the polling centers. Because the bombs were flying all around Calcutta, so nobody was coming forward. So I volunteered, and it was said I volunteered through a faculty member.
Really great having you, Mr. Balakrishnan. As always, you provide very interesting insights, not just on entrepreneurship, but also on the various other elements that are connected to it. We are really indebted to the big picture, balanced perspective that you bring in as a leader. And very importantly, we are very proud of you as our alumnus. And on behalf of CEI and IIM Calcutta, I wish to thank you for being our guest and wish you all the best. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you, guys. Krishna, Manish, Balram, Subramshu.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.